Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. We are here today to present a session on aligning strategic plans with employee performance and how to utilize the balanced scorecard. I am joined with Ryan Idstein from our firm, and I am Julie Strahl. We are both HR consultants with Sikich's HR consulting practice. So welcome, and we will begin. Today we're going to take a look at how an organization can take their strategic plan and design a performance appraisal process and ultimately a tool which will align all employees and positions to supporting the strategic goals and objectives of an organization's strategic plan. So the learning outcomes for this afternoon will be one, to discuss and go over how a balanced scorecard can be utilized to support your organization's strategic plan and get all of your staff working off the same song sheet and supporting those goals and objectives as identified. And the second step will be to look at an actual process that we assisted a client with as they developed this type of alignment and developed a merit-based plan to support the balanced scorecard for their organization's goals and objectives and apply that to each individual employee or position. So let's take a look at the agenda for today. So we're going to talk about what a balanced scorecard is, just some basic foundational issues and how that can be applied to the big picture here with aligning that with your merit and or performance management process. We're going to take a look at SMART goals, go over what SMART goals are and how they can be tied into the entire process. We're going to look at various case studies. And always feel free, after you've viewed this webinar, if you would like to reach out to us with questions, please do. All right, and now Ryan will start the process in going over that performance management framework and where do you begin with this process?
Thank you, Julie. Before you start creating your balanced scorecard, you want to make sure that you have the core framework in place. Julie mentioned the company strategy. We're going to work backwards on how do you create your company strategy. First of all, you need to define your vision, mission, and your overall strategy. You can do this by using what's called a strategy map. From the strategy map, which is a fairly intense process for creation, is formed key performance indicators. With those key performance indicators, you are identifying, defining, measuring, monitoring, and reporting on your organization's strategy. Once you have all of these components in line, you can see here that your company's strategy is your target. Moving on to the performance management cycle, you can see the strategy derives your cycle, which first includes setting measures and a target. You want to make sure when you set these measures and targets, you communicate with your employees. This should be an active discussion. Once you have set your measures and targets, you move on to planning and execution. Once you have the plan in place and have begun executing, you want to continue to monitor and evaluate your progress, acknowledging that there is the ability to realign your plan with any changes that may be necessary. As a result of the continuous monitoring and evaluating, you are allowed to reward and coach your employees. Reward your employees for achieving and exceeding their goals, and coach employees who are lacking in achievement. As you can see, this is a continuous cycle that should be seen as more than an annual performance discussion. So what is the balanced scorecard? The balanced scorecard is a management system aimed at translating an organization's strategic goals into a set of performance objectives that in turn are measured, monitored, and changed if necessary to ensure that the organization's strategic goals are met. Keep in mind that the balanced scorecard is objective, documented, and easily understood by all within your organization. Managing performance with balanced scorecard involves these 4 key factors. The balanced scorecard balances both financial and non-financial measures, balances both short and long-term measures, performance drivers with outcome measures, and leads to strategic focus and organizational alignment. Again, we do want to reiterate that the balanced scorecard is a continuous process to be reviewed by management and employees. The 4 perspectives in a balanced scorecard are listed here on this slide. The first is learning and growth. You want to answer the question with the learning and growth perspective. To achieve our vision, how must our organization learn and improve? Your questions from the internal perspective. To satisfy our customers, which processes must we excel at? From the customer perspective, to achieve our vision, how must we look to our customers? And finally, the financial perspective. If we succeed, how will we look to our stock shareholders?
All right, thanks, Ryan. And now we're going to take all of those key points that Ryan has built upon and put them together in order to create a strategy and couple that with the balanced scorecard. So in order to do that, we've created the following document, which visually shows you what needs to be built on from here. So you'll see first and foremost, we've taken an organization's mission, vision, and values, and those are core to the entire process. You'll want to identify what those are, and then as a result, roll those into a strategy or your organization's game plan for how you're going to support those mission, vision, and value statements. And that can be done both organization-wide and by employee. So once you have your strategy or game plan, you're going to want to start mapping out the process. How do we get and support the mission, vision, and values? What's the roadmap to take us there? And that is going to be your next step, and that is where your balanced scorecard with those 4 criteria that Ryan went over will feed into and help you establish that plan. And then ultimately what you're going to have is an outcome with all of those pieces in place is your strategic outcome. You will end up with satisfied customers or shareholders, and not only just satisfied, but perhaps delighted return customers, happy residents, whatever your core business source is. You're going to have success and develop good relationships as a result. You'll be able to establish excellent processes and have a motivated workforce because they all know in what way they are contributing to the big picture. This is just another picture of how a strategy map can look. It can be as elaborate or as simple as you want it to be. And you'll see here that at the foundation of it all are the 4 perspectives of the strategy. So those will never leave, but the approach of how you adhere to them and move them forward are always the same. You'll keep that as your core. And as we go through our presentation today, you'll see some other examples, but these will always be the core. So let's talk a little bit more about the balanced scorecard and its design and how it can be used to support your strategy mapping. And we'll be going over an exact example toward the end of this presentation, but for now we want to ensure that everyone has a good understanding that the balanced scorecard has to mean something to everyone. So you may have a scorecard that, as we had said, that is company or or organization-wide, down to a scorecard for every employee within your organization. You can make it as elaborate or as simple as you want it to be, but everyone needs to understand its purpose and how it can be tied or will be tied to your merit or performance management system. And in that way, just as your mission, vision, and values are always top of mind, whether you have them posted at the entrance to your organization, on everyone's desktop, on their computers, so the balanced scorecard should be just as visible to all employees and how it relates to them. Here's an example of those 4 perspectives of the balanced scorecard. And as we had talked about, the financial, internal business, learning and growth, and customer perspectives are always at the core of that. And this is a nice picture of how these 4 pieces feed into that vision and strategy as the central core. And you'll see how we've prepared an example at the end of the presentation to fully depict this in pictorial form for a specific client. At the end of the day, you want all employees to understand this process and all the different pieces that go into it, so they firmly have a gauge or clear goals and objectives going forward. So taking in those 4 perspectives, you start to drill down then further and turning those into your objectives, measures, targets, and ultimately your initiatives and results. Here's an example of one that was put together for an organization. This happened to be a park district. And this is how they took that first piece of satisfying shareholders. What are they going to do? They would like to increase the number of customers or visits to their park district, increase order and size of programming, increase frequency of programming, and all of that gets rolled into revenues, satisfied customers, frequency, and then you start drilling down even further into those targets. And those targets are those areas that you'll identify for each employee. And the initiatives are the specific initiatives to each individual on how they will contribute to meeting those targets. Sounds like a lot, I know, but as you get into the whole process and you get a few under your belt, then it tends to start rolling and being a very successful process. And it's one of those where at the end of the day you're fully vested and you have all the materials you need to fully support your strategic plan. I want to dig down a little further, a little deeper into those 4 key areas. I can't stress enough the importance of looking at each individual area and going over the objectives that you'll need to meet some of your goals. And this is where a lot of people start getting caught in the details and trying to differentiate between goals and objectives. So sometimes I find it helpful to have the definition of a goal and definition of an objective close by, because sometimes those lines blur. So with that in hand, I think you would be well advised to just keep referring to it until it becomes rote in nature. But at the end of the day, you're going to want to look at each of these 4 perspectives in relation to all of your strategic plans. And a lot of times, these 4 factors are already clearly communicated within your strategic plan document. If they are not, you may want to reach out to the people who developed that strategic plan, whether it was in-house or with a consultant, and they could help you with these pieces as well. These are the final 3 pieces of the Balanced Scorecard Foundation, and key to them would be your financial piece. And this is where all of your costs and impact fees and programming, if you're an organization that provides programming, any type of fundraising that would be required, and sponsorships. So as you can see with these lists, you can probably imagine many employees that would need to be involved in helping you reach all of the goals established with these different areas. And the same holds true for the internal or the ops division. All of your operational managers, everyone from your maintenance workers all the way up to your operation managers, need to be firmly aware of what practices and programs and processes and facilities need to be supported in order to continue to serve your client or customer base. And finally, we can't underestimate the need of the learn and grow piece. And that's where you show how much you value your staff and how you want your staff to succeed, and you continue to offer any type of continued training and education to help them to maximize their value to the organization. Now Ryan's going to talk a little bit about the KPIs, or key performance indicators.
Once you have your balanced scorecard designed and everyone does understand your vision, mission, and values, you can continue with creating the key performance indicators, or KPIs. KPIs are a set of quantifiable measures that an organization uses to gauge performance in terms of meeting strategic objectives. And here we're going to provide you with a few examples of KPIs, just in case you're not familiar with the concept. Again, going back to the Park District example of guest satisfaction. A couple of key examples here are your Net Promoter Score, or your NPS. This is how many of your guests like your brand enough to recommend or promote it to others. The Guest Satisfaction Index, the percentage of guest responses to surveys, and what's their response. Are they satisfied, unsatisfied? Why are they satisfied or unsatisfied? Guest retention. As we all know, satisfied guests are likely to continue providing business. And guest engagement, measuring your participation rate. From the internal perspective, guest relation measures. You want to achieve one response resolution for any guest complaints. Rework measures. How many corrections must be made? Schedule changes. Again, going to Julie's point of investing in your employees to provide higher level of service to your customers. And your efficiency of information systems, such as program registration, marketing systems, data maintenance. Organizations collect a lot of information from their employees and customers, and you want to make sure that you're keeping up with the technology in the times. From a learning and development perspective, enhanced skill levels. How are you investing in your employees to enhance their level of skills? Improve performance versus budget or reduce costs. What are you doing to improve your internal performance and reduce costs? The guest focus measures. And added value per employee. Investing in learning and development for your internal customers will help grow your external force. And finally, financial. What's your total shareholder return? Your return on investment and your return on capital employed. And as we've mentioned before, goals. Once you set your KPIs, you can design SMART goals. SMART goals are, number one, specific. Who do they apply to? What are they for? Measurable. How many? Obtainable. Are they reasonable? Are they achievable? Relevant. What is the expected result? And is that relevant to your strategy, the position, and your organization? And time-bound. When do you expect these goals to be completed? You do not want to leave goals without a completion date, or you will not be able to measure them in relation to your KPIs and strategy. Now, we've provided a couple examples of SMART goals here, leading back to guest satisfaction and the overall contributions of all employees in your organization to the strategy. Our first example of a SMART goal is 10% increase in guest engagement for youth soccer programs by June 1st, 2017. You can see we have how this applies to a marketing coordinator by creating targeted email blasts to your customers, as well as a program coordinator. Schedule programs accordingly. making sure that when these programs are scheduled, they accommodate student schedules, parent schedules, what have you. By collaboration between your marketing department and your programming department, the SMART goal will be achieved. Your second SMART goal is to increase Net Promoter Score by 5 points by May of 2017. Again, how does this apply cross-department? For your grounds department, promote pleasing landscape aesthetics. For your guest relations department, exude excellent customer service. Again, with your grounds department and your guest relations department collaborating, you are able to achieve the SMART goal, ultimately leading to your organization's strategy.
Thanks, Ryan. And all of these pieces put together include the process that one individual client took to establish and align their strategic plans with employee performance. It's not to say it was a perfect process. Whenever you go through and develop new programs, there's always going to be pain points and things to work through. But at the end of the day, sticking with it and keeping an eye to your strategic plan the entire time will help you remain crystal clear in what you envision the outcomes to be. And as we've always said, if you tie this to employee performance and performance management, we know there's no perfect employee performance management system or appraisal system, but what we're seeing is that so many organizations have a performance management plan that in no way, shape, or form supports an organization's goals and objectives. They're more individualized in nature, and employees, if they're building or developing or going about the course of their work during any given day, they don't have a good understanding of how what they do is impacting the big picture and the success of the organization. And it is the hope of this type of process that every employee will then be able to say, because I'm building this or performing this, this is how I'm contributing to the overall big picture of the organization. And that is just where and how we developed a plan with a client that met that type of goal. And as we were going through the process, I would like to share a picture with you of how we tried to convey every employee's role within this big alignment and balanced scorecard process. And as I had mentioned earlier in the discussion, we always said that with any balanced scorecard, at the core of it is the vision and the strategy. And ultimately, thinking of your vision and strategy as the foundation or core, we thought of this, and this being a park district we were working with, we said, why don't you look at it as a tree? And the trunk or the foundation of the tree would represent your vision and your strategy. And from there, as you branch out, you have your balanced scorecard components for each department within your organization. And those would be your branches. And then what they are in the process of doing at this time are creating the leaves to this tree. And the leaves to the tree are the individual balanced scorecards for each and every employee. So they will see their leaf on the tree, which represents how they work within a department, and they're all part of the foundational base, which is the vision and strategy of the park district. So sometimes, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. The park district found that this was very helpful in their process. So we'd like to thank you for your time this afternoon for a quick overview of how to align your strategic plans with employee performance. We shared a lot of information over the course of the last few minutes, but we're always here to help you and guide you and provide additional information should you want to embark on this exciting process. So thank you for your time this afternoon.